Hey, Stress, what's up? And today I'm gonna do a review on the fourth studio album by Montreal indie rock band Arcade Fire, Reflektor, with a K. Throughout their discography, their musical styles vary a lot. From the very sentimental and bittersweet orchestral indie rock of their first two albums to a more poppy, clean-sounding Americana-styled The Suburbs. And now they try their hands on disco music. What a bunch of mad lads. But maybe that's why their music is always so intriguing and compelling. On this album, they incorporate more keyboards and synths and drum loops and less strings and organic acoustic guitars, with production that is even more cleanly shaved, polished, and sharp. And they were really ambitious on this album, attempting to create another concept album. And not just any 40 or 50 minute long album, but a double album. And James Murphy of LCD Soundsystem is producing this album. We're in for a treat. You can also tell the style that the band is going for from the album cover. Yep, which is right there, and it is my favorite Arcade Fire album cover so far. The statue with one of the boys covering their eyes, the marble backdrop, and that perfectly shaped black hole. It's gonna be a very expensive sounding, technical, futuristic, entrancing 2001 A Space Odyssey kinda album, so sure as hell that this album takes a way more interesting direction than the Suburbs did. I don't know why I'm stuttering over there. Maybe it's because I have to recite the entire Chinese, which is why it's more interesting to talk about this album than all their previous projects. The album starts off with the title track, Reflektor, a 7-minute long, multifaceted disco dance pop epic that's literally one of my favorite songs of the 2010s, the 2010s. What's wrong with me? It says 2010s here and alright. It begins with a sea of bubbly, clipping keyboards that's super colorful and vivid and vibrant. Then it breaks into the verses with a very infectious drum beat and some crispy guitars with a lavishing ambient backdrop. That's a mouthful. The verses and the choruses are great. They flow into each other really well, and I want more Win Butler and Regine duets. They're fantastic. I thought I found a way to enter. It's just a reflector, just a reflector, just a reflector. The synths are super tasteful and the guitar lick is brilliant. Then the song also incorporates more horns that sound super lush and expensive, and they sound like they're echoing the guitars, except they're more deep and long-winded. At around the 4:20-minute mark, we get a surprise appearance from David Bowie, the man, the myth, the legend, David Bowie. And he fits into the song really, really well. His raspy and eccentric vocals complement Win's sturdy and lively vocals really well. David Bowie really serves as the big, red, sweet, juicy cherry on top. And of course, the track has a quiet part before it hits its very orgasmic climax, and I just enjoy every single second of the track so much, it's crazy. And the song is also attached to a very, very awesome music video that's honestly one of my favorite music videos in the 2010s, in the top 5 at least. All the band members wearing giant head figures playing in the back of the truck, the disco ball shining light to all directions, and the real band members playing reflection with the fake ones, plus the man with every inch of his body covered in mirror shards, plus the music video isn't black and white, so it had this very heavy noir feel. So damn brilliant and artsy. It's such a colorful, vivid, vibrant, expensive, lavishing, elegant disco jam. It's awesome. I'm just gonna give it a perfect score. 10 out of 10. Hands down. The second track is We Exist, with the glamorous guitars and playful deep synths. It's another catchy and sticky disco dance tune that sounds really good. They also worked in some pianos that are very heartwarming, and the piano lines go so well together with the synths and the bass guitars, it's very, very musically satisfying. The track deals with discrimination and getting ignored, and to respond that, the band shouts, "We exist!"
Down on the knees, begging us please, play and die, we don't exist.
Win Butler and Regine's performance on this track is full of energy and passion, as well as the scream and shout on most of the lyrics, as well as they scream and shout most of the lyrics. And Andrew Garfield kills it in the music video. He's amazing. I'm also giving We Exist a 10. But then the album starts to trail off. First with Flashbulb Eyes. I like the lyrics, talking about how your soul is taken when the camera takes a photo. It's interesting. And the instrumentals on this thing are crisp. The beats and the percussions sound good, and the bass guitars are kind of funky. But the instrumentals are really stripped back and minimalistic. It's underwhelming. The song lacks a strong groove and a consistent guitar line. It sounds really drab and dry. And hearing Win Butler moan over this track with echoey effects is just making the track even more uninteresting and awkward, actually. I'm giving this track a 4 out of 10. Yeah, I don't like it. Then we have Here Comes the Nighttime, which is a track that a lot of Arcade Fire fans praise, but I find it kinda underwhelming, kinda overrated. At first, it has these soaring guitars and fast, intense drums like it was pulled straight out of a Godspeed You Black Emperor track during its climax, but then it breaks into this slow jam with the pulsating synths and the very optimistic and light-hearted guitars. And occasionally we get these very jolly piano lines that are really sweet to the ears. Bam, bam, ba-da-nim, bam, 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 ba-da-nim, bam. But it's the vocal melodies here that feel kinda mild. It feels almost uninspired. There's nothing that hits hard about the vocal melodies other than it's a little happy tune that you may sing around the campfire, but dragged on for 6.5 minutes. And then the song ends off with it sounding like Godspeed again. And I also don't like how the piano and the vocals here sound a little distorted. It gives this track, like, instead of making the track feel more lively, it makes the track feel more dead, almost. I'm giving Here Comes the Nighttime a 6 to a 5 out of 10. Out of 10, I'm sorry. But another great track on the album would have to be Normal Person. The track starts off with Win Butler thanking people for coming and asking them do they like rock and roll music, treating it like a live recording, and I thought that was kinda interesting. And then in the track, we get these punchy drum guitar instrumentals that are kinda funky, and we get Win Butler criticizing about the society with some thought-provoking lyrics. And the chorus of this thing is fantastic. It's explosive and exciting. It doesn't hinder itself with the overly simplistic instrumentals, but instead they worked a kick-ass bass line into the thing, and the climax of this thing is satisfying. As well, even though the vocals are a little overshadowed by the instrumentals. But I also really like the key change towards the last leg of the track. It's pretty awesome and pretty sweet. I'm giving Normal Person a 9 out of 10. It's true. Then we have You Already Know with an appearance at the beginning of the track that I think is Jonathan Ross. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Arcade Fire! And then we get the circusy, funhouse, bouncy bass and a juggly guitar line, and honestly, it doesn't sound all that bad. It's just okay. It's just decent at best. It's like an Arcade Fire song from the suburbs, but it's a little faster, a little heavier, a little sweeter, a little more expensive, and maybe a little bit less tasteful, a little bit less artsy. The chorus is just so-so, and the instrumental swell at the end doesn't really justify the track for me. And it feels like Arcade Fire is trying to sound like a specific band or a fusion of bands as they're mixing some sort of post-punk and blues rock together. I'm just kind of feeling a 6 out of 10 on this track. But the first disc ends off really strongly with Joan of Arc, which is probably the most underrated Arcade Fire track ever. Why am I speaking like this? Alongside with maybe Un Ani Sans Lumière and My Body is a Cage. It's a real good song. At first, it's this raw and raging punk rock jam running freely without drums, then it slows down a bit, and then it breaks into a very catchy and swingy garage rock jam out, with the punchy drums once again. The chorus of this thing sounds really good, it's really catchy. The way Win Butler and Regine's vocals echo each other in the chorus is quite the ear candy, plus the very fat and bouncy bass. And the lyrics of this song are not that bad either, talking about having faith in someone, even though everyone else is disrespecting and laughing at that said someone, taking your own stance, not being afraid of the mainstreamers. I'm giving Joan of Arc a 9 out of 10. Highly, criminally underrated.
I'm the one that follow you, you're my Joan of Arc.
And after some silence, we hit disc 2 with Here Comes the Nighttime 2, with some fast ascending bleeps and bloops at first, like a strange little logo intro in the 70s. For some reason, it feels like I'm in the middle of space inside an aircraft, a spacecraft, alone, comfortably, with the panels that are just blinking lights. It's pretty entrancing. And then the band fades in with these very heartwarming guitars and low-pitched chants, as well as some bells just to make the atmosphere more festive. And the singing are really slow and gorgeous, and the chords are shimmering. Beautiful. It would be great if only this track was longer and more eventful, maybe. But still, it's a really heartwarming track. It's like taking a hot shower in winter. I'm honestly giving this track an 8 out of 10. But then we get Awful Sound, open bracket, Oh Eurydice, close bracket, with some really metallic sounding skipping percussions and some low-key guitars. And yeah, it's kind of bland instrumentally. Not that it doesn't sound interesting, it's that it isn't as eventful. And then later on the track we get these blurred out synths that remind me a lot of Radiohead's Amnesiac B-sides for some reason, especially the track Transatlantic Drawl, and it also reminds me of the climax of Swan's Helpless Child for some reason. But that being said, the way it's incorporated into the track is just kind of bland. There's not really a big climax or conclusion to this track, so I'm feeling kind of indifferent to it. I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. But the album picks itself back up for a tad bit with It's Never Over, Hey Orpheus, with some constantly looping and cycling synths and snappy kick drums that sound like an alarm sound at first, but it really breaks into this badass groove afterwards with a killer bass line. The vocals of this track are energetic as well when Win Butler and Regine are yelling, "Hey, Orpheus!" And the very bright and smooth vocal harmonies are pretty refreshing. But my gripe with the track is its second half. It isn't as laser focused as the first half with the chirpy guitars and strong drums. It gets quiet and more intimate, and Arcade Fire didn't really do all that well on the second half, but still, great track overall. The production of this thing is on point. James Murphy really did Arcade Fire a big one, and I'm kind of feeling a 7 to an 8 on It's Never Over. And the great production continues on to the next track, Porno. I shouldn't say that word loudly. With the cutesy and light-hearted sound effects and the very bouncy and bright synths that back up Win Butler's vocals. And his vocals are amazing on this track. It's super smooth, and the song itself is kind of catchy, kind of sticky. And the lyrics of this track are pretty interesting as well, talking about how porn addiction would affect our relationships and the way we see things. But once again, the melody of the song isn't all that appealing to me. It's pretty good, but that's it. There's nothing that stand out to me, and it stands at somewhere around 6 minutes long, so I'm kind of feeling an 8 to a 7 on this track. Then we have Afterlife, another 6-minute long track. It has some really bubbly and fun synths and guitars, instrumentals that has a very steady and constant dance beat. And we get the chorus right off the bat with Win and Regine singing in duet beautifully, scream and shout, till we work it out, till we work it out. It's a little redundant, but you know what? It's not that bad. It's actually kind of catchy and danceable, to be honest. But the verses of this track are pretty lackluster and forgettable. Similar to the previous track, it's just decent at best. I'm giving Afterlife a 7 out of 10. Long snippets stay buried inside the thin walls of noise. It makes listening to the album sound like traveling to another dimension in a spacecraft, but it's still very underwhelming. Legend says that you can listen to Supersymmetry while it plays forward and backwards at the same time. But to be honest, I heard the DIY symmetrical version of the track and it's still underwhelming. It's like they're trying to pull off a 10,000 Days on this album, but it's for cool hip millennials. I'm feeling a 4 to a 5 out of 10 for this track. Overall, I think the album is just okay. The worst tracks on the album are pretty bad, but the best tracks are really, really good. So it's a mixed bag. Seeing Arcade Fire take such a strange direction is such a fresh breath of air, but it's still full of hits and misses. And on this album, there are more hits than misses, but I can't say that for their next album. Again, I like the production of the album. The instrumentals are very vivid and colorful and sticky, but the melodies itself are a bit lackluster. And it's like Arcade Fire is trying to imitate this band and that band, and they're beginning to ignore their core sound a little bit, maybe. But still, the album is okay overall. The worst is Flashbulb Eyes, and the best is Reflektor. I'm giving Arcade Fire's Reflektor a 6 to a 7 out of 10. So, have you listened to Arcade Fire's Reflektor from 1 to 10? How much did you rate it? Like if you like it. Hate if you hate it. And subscribe if you want more. Seriously, please subscribe. I'm in a really bad situation right now, and it's just a button. It would be really, really amazing if you would press that button. Thank you for watching.